After months of conflict and instability, Ukrainians are set to elect a new parliament. President Petro Poroshenko hopes the outcome will help him end the fighting in the east and improve relations with Russia. But can these elections usher in a new era in Ukraine? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mike Hanna. It's an election that's meant to revive Ukraine after months of conflict and to rescue an economy that's nearing collapse. But the army is still fighting pro-Russian separatists in the east despite a peace agreement. And corruption is so common that Ukraine is unlikely to receive the financial aid it needs unless critical reforms are made. President Petro Poroshenko says he's trying to improve strained relations with Russia. But any reconciliation is unlikely while he's also trying to move closer to the European Union. There are 29 parties competing in the parliamentary election, but 3 are expected to dominate. The Poroshenko bloc, founded by the president, his party is predicted to get some 30% of the vote. Far behind this bloc in the polls is the Radical Party, headed by Ole Lyasko, which could receive at least 11% of the vote. And in third place is former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko's party, the Fatherland, which is expected to get some 7%. And some of the biggest issues Ukraine is trying to overcome include ending the rebellion in the east, where more than 3,500 people have been killed since fighting began with separatists in April. Relations with Russia. Apart from the armed conflict, Ukraine needs Russian gas supplies, which Moscow cut in June. And despite opposition from Russia, Ukraine seems determined to join the European Union. It was the former President Viktor Yanukovych's decision to back away from an EU trade agreement last year that led to the current crisis. Well, with us now to discuss this, from Kiev, I'm joined by Volodymyr Ariev. He's a Ukrainian MP with President Petro Poroshenko bloc. In Moscow, Vyacheslav Matuzos, he's a former Russian diplomat and chairman of the Russian Friendship Society with Arab countries. And finally, also joining us from Kiev is Alexei Haran, political analyst and professor of comparative politics at the University of Kyiv-Molia Academy. Welcome to you all. Let's begin with Volodymyr Ariev. The demand of many in Ukraine is real political reform. Is this something you think that a new parliament could achieve?
Yes, I think it's a very big chance. It's a second chance to Ukraine since independence we got 23 years ago. And we drop off a chance to start real reforms, real European integration in early 90s of the last century. And now, after the events in Maidan and when Revolution of Dignity had overcame, we have a new chance for reforms. I think the poll sites and all sociological researches shows that democratic forces could have a strong win after elections at October 26th. And the next steps would be forming of a new democratic coalition and new government who will work on reforms together with a majority, and we even expect a constitutional majority of pro-European forces in Ukrainian parliament. Reforms in Ukraine is strongly needed. We are jogging at one place last 23 years and didn't make any move to west or east. And Ukrainian nation choose after Revolution of Dignity and confirm it at presidential election that we choose European integration and Western model of Ukrainian way.
Well, let's go to Alexei Haran. This issue of reform, as we heard there, something that has been stagnant for a long period of time. Do you think a new parliament could address the issue?
Yes, I agree with my colleague, and actually the overthrow of criminal and corrupt dictator Yanukovych, actually this opens the way for changing the country. And we have conducted presidential elections in May, which were free and fair and which were recognized by international community. Now we are going to conduct free parliamentary elections, which are also competitive. And it's also very important to stress that even critics of the present president or representatives of old regime, they also participate in these elections. We may like it or not, but they participate, and it makes these elections free and fair. And according to the poll, it's clear that majority would belong to, well, schematically, let's call it pro-reform majority.
Vyacheslav Matuzos, now, to what extent does Russia view reform within Ukraine as a threat, if it does at all?
On my opinion, Russia supporting any reform that are leading to the stabilization in Ukraine, because in neighbor country, such kind of disturbances that we have watched during last 6 months, I think that doesn't satisfy Russian leadership, and I'm afraid that Poroshenko, as recognized as a legitimate president of Ukraine, have quite a lot of difficulties with his opposition. His opposition is not in eastern Ukraine, Lugansk or Donetsk. His opposition, on our estimation, is inside those who made a coup d'etat and overthrew Yanukovych. Yanukovych was not a good guy, but he was a legitimate guy. And any effort to satisfy that all situation is legitimate, we are not agree with this consumption. And so I think that right now the elections in Ukraine are very thoroughly watched in Russia. But among political observers in Russia, there are quite a lot of people who are afraid that the shift to the right, it will be main feature of Ukrainian elections, because of the real opposition of current ruling circles are not participating, or they were frightened. They are not participating in the election as a rule. Even those regions that traditionally were with Yanukovych, with party of regions, there were Russian populations who are not agree with those who are now represent Ukrainian parliament. Ukrainian parliament one side oriented, and it is animalized in Russia, with Russia, and we consider that changing the whole atmosphere in Ukraine only can give a chance to make good relations with their neighbors, that is Russia, and Russia is not against in political involvement Ukraine to European Union. We as Russians also are trying to make bridges to Europe. I don't think that entering European Union or Ukraine maybe help this dream to join, to build up big Europe from Ural and
we'll go into those areas in a moment, Vyacheslav Matuzov. But I first want to go to Volodymyr Ariev, who I saw was shaking his head a couple of times during your comments there. What was your point of disagreement with what was said there, Volodymyr?
It's many points of disagreed, because how can population in Crimea, in Ukrainian Crimea, can vote if it's annexed by Russian Federation? How could some million people in some parts of Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast can vote if they occupied by terrorists supported by Russia with using of Russian regular troops? many eastern and southern regions that previously supported the party of region can vote absolutely free and transparent. But Russia did everything to destabilize situation in Ukraine and to annex Crimea and destabilize situation in the eastern part of Ukraine. What kind of relations we can discuss now until foreign invasion, Russian invasion is actually acting here on our territory. So I think these kinds of manipulation, it's absolutely transparent and understandable for the entire world. And people in the world already estimated that Russia's lying and Russia's politics is absolutely not compared to democratic and normal behavior of the big country as if Russia want to present it as itself.
Well, Alexei Haran, your view, I mean, some observers have argued strongly that within Ukraine there is division in terms of how to deal with Russia. Some, including the president, are still looking for a negotiated solution. Others who are standing in these elections are actually advocating a military answer to dealing with Russia. This whole issue of Russia, is it likely to cause divisions within the new parliament itself, do you believe?
No, listen, first of all, we need to understand that in contrast to Russia, Ukraine is a democratic country. So we have different opinions in Ukrainian parliament, in contrast to the Russian one, where everything is subdued to Mr. Putin's desire. So it's normal to have different views. I would like also to stress that if we analyze the part of how much territories are controlled by so-called pro-Russian separatists, the number is 3% of Ukrainian territory. So we cannot even call about that east of the country is controlled by separatists. No, it's only part. It's only part of the east, which is controlled by pro-Russian separatists with direct intervention from Russia. Russian troops are on Ukrainian soil. These are the facts, and this is widely recognized by international community. And it's very interesting to see how Russian colleagues are denying this fact and how they are trying to teach Ukrainians how to behave and what kind of democracy we should have. So Ukraine is a free country, and we are able to build a democratic system and to choose what kind of politics we would like to have. Unfortunately, there was a Russian intervention, there was the annexation of Crimea, and for our audience to understand, it could be easily compared to what Saddam Hussein did in Kuwait. He said, there's no Kuwait, it's Iraq. That's what exactly Putin said. There's no Ukrainian Crimea, this is Russian Crimea. And it was direct violation of all the possible laws and treaties, including between Russia and Ukraine. So definitely Russia, Kremlin, Mr. Putin himself behaves as in a very aggressive manner, which is condemned by international community, including the General Assembly of the United Nations, where more than 100 nations supported Ukraine, and only about 10 supported 10, which includes actually dictatorship regimes, which supported the Russian point of view.
Well, Vyacheslav Matuzov, to focus once again on these elections, is it or is it not in Russia's interest for these elections to proceed smoothly, peacefully, for Ukraine to establish a sense of democratic stability, and of course to get economic renewal? What is Russia's view on those factors?
We want to, but I want to stress also that any accusations of Russia, that Russian military forces entered Ukraine and waging war against Ukrainian army, it is a false position. It is absolutely lie, and I can say that no killing of people, of children from the side of those who are now represent Donetsk or Lugansk. But Donetsk or Lugansk people, children, are killed by National Guard, but by Ukrainian army. And what you want from those people?
Well, Vyacheslav Matuzov, apologies for interrupting you.
They are firing, bombing.
Well, apologies for interrupting you, but the specific question I asked was whether it is in Russia's interest or not for Ukraine to become stable and for it to develop economically.
Absolutely, except Crimea, because Crimea is not Russian decision. Also, all time I said that it is the gift of Barack Obama to Vladimir Putin, because he began a coup d'etat in Kiev that was rejected by population in Crimea, and they demand through referendum, they demanded to join a Russian Federation. Russia Federation agreed with this decision of population, Crimea, who are originally, most of them are Russians.
Well, let's just move past this particular debate, if I may, Vyacheslav Matuzov. Apologies for interrupting you again. But I want to get into the issue of reform with Volodymyr Ariev. One of the reforms perhaps that would be looked at the moment, these elections will be contested. Well, the seats within the Congress, half of them will go to representatives from single districts. The other half will come from party lists. Now, some critics insist that this is a system that needs to be looked at. This is a system that needs to be reformed. What is your view?
I think we need a new electoral system in Ukraine that could be party lists, but open party lists. We had tried to vote for the new system, but it was not enough votes for it because we have problems with the former Party of Region members who didn't want to make real changes in Ukraine. And now we predict that some guys who plundered Ukraine with Mr. Yanukovych, about 30 people can enter to Ukrainian parliament by regional constituencies. I'm also running in constituency in Kiev city, in the capital, but in Kiev elections are really fair and transparent. But the problem of the former regime supporters who run in another constituencies, especially in the eastern southern part of Ukraine, they try to bribe people, and we organize a strong resistance for such kind of violation of electoral law. But also the big problem that some Russian agents want to destabilize Ukraine. Ukrainian security services arrested the assistant of Russian State Duma deputy connected to the FSB, Russian FSB today. And we found the many places where was a weapon hidden to some cases of destabilization planned for election day. And we understand that Russia interested in Ukrainian stability as the wolf interested of sheep stability in its stomach. But we will resist, and finally I think that Ukraine will survive after Russian aggression. We didn't let to Russian plans, aggressive plans to widespread on the whole territory of Ukraine, and the elections would be fair, transparent, and shows our democratic and European way.
Haran, if I may, one of the issues as well, as we've heard repeatedly, is that of corruption. Now, there has already been established an anti-corruption bureau. This is a body that will have law enforcement power as well. How critical is this that a new parliament gets behind this law enforcing arm of a fight against corruption?
Well, that's why we need early parliamentary elections, because the previous parliament was elected under dictator, and it was elected with a lot of falsifications, and the parliament voted in unconstitutional way, the previous one. So that's why 70% of Ukrainians were in favor of calling early parliamentary elections. And as in the new parliaments, it's clear that there would be majority of pro-reform forces, there would be more possibilities to fight corruption, and to introduce legislation which is necessary for reforming the country and for bringing it closer to Europe.
Well, this is an issue, Vyacheslav Matuzov, that will come up. It does appear that the new parliament may well be orientated towards a much closer relationship with Europe. Does Russia see that as a threat? You said a few minutes ago that it does not oppose closer relations between Ukraine and the EU, for example. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Politically, we have no objections. Let them go what they want. But I reject fully and unconditionally that Russia is aggressive. Aggressive is those who have made a coup d'etat in Kiev and supported by the United States of America, fully, unconditionally. I think that this is the main issue that our President Putin 1 hour ago talked about in Sochi on Valdai meeting. I think that it is, while they don't change their mind, they cannot find the peace inside them. It's not Russia who disturbed Ukraine. Ukraine are disturbed by Ukrainians. And because they are killing each other, 3,500 killed, not in Lvov, not in Kiev, not Dnipropetrovsk, but in Donbass or Lugansk. Children, peaceful population.
Once again, Vyacheslav Matuzov,
the argument against their own population.
This is Kremlin lie. This is total lie.
Well, let us just move on very quickly.
I need to stress once again, it wasn't Ukraine which attacked Russia. It wasn't Ukraine which annexed part of the territory of Russia. It's not Ukraine which is sending Ukrainian troops
not
to
annexation.
The Russian soil.
No annexation. Russia doesn't annex. Not Donetsk,
Russian
not Lugansk.
Well, let's move past beyond this particular issue, because I just want to focus at this. We move to the end of the show on the issue of elections itself. Volodymyr Ariev, if you can hear me, if we can just address one particular issue to do with these elections, and that is, as we hear, the argument with Russia is continuous. Do you believe that relations need to be restored in some way with Russia, despite the huge antagonism between Ukraine and that country at present?
I just want to tell that it's very difficult to comment some manipulative sentences, because what I see, I remember Soviet propaganda. I was a young schoolboy when Soviet Union had fell down, but I remember the Soviet propaganda style, and what we hear now, it's from the Russian side, from the Russian even scientists. What we hear really the sentences of former Soviet propaganda, but in new colors. What about the elections? I see the Russia will try to make an influence through the 5-column parties that, like communists, like so-called opposition bloc, former Party of Regions. They're strongly connected to many Russian businessmen from the close circles of Mr. Putin. And the question of Russian influence in Ukraine, I think Russian people must decide, they need Mr. Putin or do not? Because he is a source of all menace and all tensions in Ukraine, including elections and situation in Crimea and in eastern part of Ukraine.
Well, this weekend, Ukraine will elect its own leaders. My thanks to our guests, Volodymyr Ariev, Vyacheslav Matuzov, and Alexei Haran. And please feel free to add your voice to this discussion. You can leave your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. We're also on Twitter. Look for @AJ Inside Story. From me, Mike Hanna, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.